Since the indictment of Donald Trump, a lot of people on the right have been bringing up cases that are very similar to what they are trying to criminally charge Donald Trump for. And these include the Hillary Clinton classified email case and the Bill Clinton sock drawer case and the Joe Biden classified docs when he wasn't supposed to have them. Well, let's talk about whataboutisms. And whataboutism is something that the left is freaking out about. This is what they call any comparison to the Trump indictments. And in their eyes, this is just to distract from Trump's indictment. But they're actually distracting from the most important thing when it comes to justice, and that is whataboutisms. Whataboutism is something that we look to understand if something is just. It's called precedent, and it's a way that we can go back and look at ways that the law has been interpreted. So we're going to talk about how the left has gotten a very strong aversion to whataboutisms, and I'm going to show you why. It's because they are full of disinformation. So stick around and like and subscribe. All right, we're going to go over to CNN, and they're the unbiased and very serious news organization. And let's hear what this lady from the Times has to say for herself.
Titled "The Dangerous Whataboutism" in the Trump classified documents case. And in it, Barbara, you write in part this: the indictment of Donald Trump on charges of retaining government documents brought with it the inevitable false equivalencies of the conduct of Trump's chief political rival. But the actions of the two men are different, as deliberately driving your car into a crowd of people and committing a fender bender. Both acts involves cars, but the similarities end there. Whataboutism may have become a common political ploy, but it is a trick straight out of the disinformation playbook. You continue. Whataboutism is a strategy used by authoritarian leaders to excuse their own misconduct, and that it's an essential piece of Kremlin tradecraft. The goal of this tactic is not to convince the public that the leader is innocent, but to portray all politicians as dishonest. Anyone claiming to value integrity is scoffed at as duplicitous or naive. And here we go with Trump and a lot of people who follow Trump and a lot of leaders in Congress playing that game straight on, even when nuclear secrets are involved.
Yeah, and the comparisons here are just so drastically different from 12 documents that showed up in boxes of Joe Biden and what Donald Trump has done. That indictment, over 49 pages, talks not just about the kinds of documents that Donald Trump retained, as we discussed, nuclear secrets, but his incredible orchestration to deceive the Justice Department and keep them. When prosecutors look to decide whether charges should be filed, they are looking for those aggravating factors, not some accidental retention of documents, but deception, willfulness, disloyalty to the United States, and exposure to people unauthorized to receive them. Donald Trump's conduct here is completely different. And so when people are comparing him to others, what they really want to do is bring others into the conversation. What you won't hear is people really defending the conduct of Donald Trump. What they're saying instead is everybody does it, so what's the big deal?
I just want to point out 3 quick falsehoods right there. First, she said nuclear secrets were involved. We have no proof of that, and we have nothing that shows that nuclear secrets are involved at all in this. Second, she talks about the deception involved, and we are going to disprove that later on, but let's just go ahead and tell you right now that's false. And also, she said the 12 documents found from Biden. That's also false. There was many more than 12 documents. She's trying to downplay that situation. So now that that's cleared up, let's continue.
Barb, let me ask you about another case of whataboutism, as you write about it in your new piece, and that is one we've heard from almost every Republican who's not really defending Donald Trump, but saying, what about Hillary Clinton and the emails? What about the private server at her home? There was a 3-year Justice Department investigation into Hillary Clinton, into her server, that ended during the Trump administration. We should point out that said it found no systemic, it wasn't a concerted effort, there was no effort to obstruct, that they were not doing what Donald Trump is alleged to have done at Mar-a-Lago. How did those two cases, because I think it's important to remind our viewers, how did those two cases, Hillary Clinton's email server and what Donald Trump is alleged to have done at Mar-a-Lago, how do they compare?
Yeah, so as you will recall, there was an Inspector General report about that, and then Jim Comey gave a famous press conference where he recommended that no charges will be filed. And the thing that was noteworthy there that I think is the key difference is criminal intent. To file criminal charges, you must prove as an element criminal intent. In Donald Trump's case, there is evidence that he acted willfully. That is, he knew what he was doing, and he even knew what he was doing was illegal. In the case of Hillary Clinton, as both the IG and Jim Comey said, there was no evidence of criminal intent, that she was unaware that the documents that she was seeing on the email were classified, and so that she was storing them in a way that was not within the guidance and the protocols of handling classified information. And so for that reason, these cases are very different. In addition, there was never a moment when she was told, you are retaining classified documents, please return them, and refused to do so. Yep. So the absence of those aggravating factors is what makes these two cases completely different. So
I want to take a trip back in time real quick to when Trey Gowdy was questioning Jim Comey in Congress about the Hillary Clinton
Director
email
Comey,
case.
Secretary Clinton said she never sent or received any classified information over her private email. Was that true?
Our investigation found that there was classified information sent.
So it was not true.
Right. That's what I said.
Okay. Well, I'm looking for a little shorter answer, so you and I are not here quite as long. Secretary Clinton said there was nothing marked classified on her emails, either sent or received. Was that true?
That's not true. There were a small number of portion markings on, I think, 3 of the documents.
Secretary Clinton said, I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material. Was that true?
There was classified material emailed.
Secretary Clinton said she used just one device. Was that true?
She used multiple devices during the 4 years of her term as Secretary of State.
Secretary Clinton said all work-related emails were returned to the State Department. Was that true?
No, we found work-related emails, thousands, that were not returned.
Secretary Clinton said neither she nor anyone else deleted work-related emails from her personal account. Was that true?
That's a harder one to answer. We found traces of work-related emails on devices or in Slack space, whether they were deleted or whether when a server was changed out, something happened to them. There's no doubt that there were work-related emails that were removed electronically from the email system.
Secretary Clinton said her lawyers read every one of the emails and were overly inclusive. Did her lawyers read the email content individually?
No.
Well, in the interest of time, and because I have a plane to catch tomorrow afternoon, I'm not going to go through any more of the false
She was unaware that the documents that she was seeing on the email were classified, and so that she was storing them in a way that was not within the guidance and the protocols of handling classified information. And so for that reason,
I'm going to ask you to put
on
on your old hat. False exculpatory statements, they are used for what?
Well, either for a substantive prosecution or for evidence of intent in a criminal prosecution.
Exactly. Intent and consciousness of guilt, right? Is that right?
Right.
Consciousness of guilt and intent. In your old job, you would prove intent, as you just referenced, by showing the jury evidence of a complex scheme that was designed for the very purpose of concealing the public record. And you would be arguing, in addition to concealment, the destruction that you and I just talked about, or certainly the failure to preserve. You would argue all of that under the heading of intent. You would also be arguing the pervasiveness of the scheme, when it started, when it ended, and the number of emails, whether they were originally classified or up-classified. You would argue all of that under the heading of intent. You would also probably, under common scheme or plan, argue the burn bags of daily calendar entries or the missing daily calendar entries as a common scheme or plan to conceal. 2 days ago, Director, you said a reasonable person in her position should have known a private email was no place to send and receive classified information. You're right, an average person does know not to do that. This is no average person. This is a former First Lady, a former United States Senator, and a former Secretary of State that the President now contends is the most competent, qualified person to be president since Jefferson. He didn't say that in 2008, but he says it now. She affirmatively rejected efforts to give her a state.gov account. She kept these private emails for almost 2 years and only turned them over to Congress because we found out she had a private email account. So you have a rogue email system set up before she took the oath of office, thousands of what we now know to be classified emails, some of which were classified at the time. One of her more frequent email comrades was in fact hacked, and you don't know whether or not she was. And this scheme took place over a long period of time and resulted in the destruction of public records. And yet you say there is insufficient evidence of intent. You say she was extremely careless, but not intentionally so. You and I both know intent is really difficult to prove. Very rarely do defendants announce, on this date, I intend to break this criminal code section. just to put everyone on notice, I am going to break the law on this date. It never happens that way. You have to do it with circumstantial evidence. Or if you're Congress and you realize how difficult it is to prove specific intent, you will formulate a statute that allows for gross
And then Jim Comey
negligence.
gave a famous
My
press
time is
conference where he recommended that no charges will be filed. And the thing that was noteworthy there that I think is the key difference is criminal intent. To file criminal charges, you must prove as an element criminal intent. In Donald Trump's case, there is evidence that he acted willfully. That is, he knew what he was doing, and he even knew what he was doing was illegal. In the case of Hillary Clinton, as both the IG and Jim Comey said, there was no evidence of criminal intent.
I'm going to show you what a CNN anchor's worst nightmare looks like.
They destroyed BlackBerries with hammers in the State Department. That's not what we wanted the president to say.
Actually,
And by the way,
Evan,
and
hold
by
on.
the way,
You fact check that. Hang on, Evan Perez. Hammers, fact check that for me, please, on the fly.
Yes, they did, Brooke.
Thanks,
as you mentioned, there were 13 devices, mobile devices, and 5 iPads that the FBI said that, you know, in some way were used with her private email server, and they did, in some cases, just destroy them with hammers when they were done using them.
Now, I brought up this Clinton sock drawer case before, and here is Tom Fenton explaining exactly what that case was. He is the one who actually put in that FOIA request, and that set precedent for this whole case.
In 2010, Judicial Watch submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to the Clinton Library and Presidential Museum, seeking access to these Clinton audio tapes that I talked about from his time as president. The Obama National Archives, NARA, it's called NARA, National Archives, responded that the audio tapes are personal records and therefore not subject to the Presidential Records Act or FOIA. So what happens is, under the Presidential Records Act, the archives takes custody of records designated as presidential records by a president or people that he designates to designate as president to do that work. And then they make them available after a certain period of time under FOIA or the FOIA equivalent under the Presidential Records Act, meaning you can ask for them, and if you don't get them, you can sue. Judicial Watch subsequently sued, as I noted, and requested that the court declare the audio tapes to be presidential records.
Now, he brings up a very important point here. He sued them because the Presidential Records Act is a civil law. It's not a criminal law. So people thinking that the president can be charged under the Presidential Records Act are just absolutely wrong.
And because they are not currently in the government's possession, to compel the archives to assume custody and control over them. Doesn't that sound exactly like the Trump case? We took the Justice Department position they're now taking against Trump, against Clinton, and they opposed us. Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who is far, far to the left on the judiciary. She's in the U.S. District Court here in the District of Columbia, so she's a D.C. judge, ruled against us. And in doing so, she explained, and I'm going to quote from the court opinion. Under the statutory scheme established by the Presidential Records Act, the decision to segregate personal materials from presidential records is made by the president during the president's term and in his sole discretion. And then she quotes the law, she gives a citation to the law. If you want to look it up, it's 4 U.S.C. Section 2203B. So the archives could not make a classification decision different from the president. I'll say it again. The archives could not make a classification decision different from the president. Since the president is completely entrusted with the management and even the disposal of presidential records during his time in office, it would be difficult for this court to conclude that Congress intended that he would have had less authority to do what he pleases with what he considers to be his personal records.
Thank you so much for watching this. I really hope that you were able to get something out of it. And if you were, please leave a like so that this video gets out to more people. And also share it. Share it with your family, your friends, and let them know that whataboutism actually is a very important thing. And there's a lot of whataboutism here. So this is a bogus Trump indictment again, and there's probably more to come in the future, but it hasn't really gotten the reaction that they expected. So I'm going to show you, before we go, a little clip that is Jake Tapper freaking out. But until next time, peace be with you.
Donald Trump is charged with a series of federal felonies for mishandling the most sensitive government documents that we have, and for obstruction of justice, along with law.The, who is charged with intentionally setting up lies to the grand jury, to the FBI. Any way you look at this, and again, despite whatever may be going on in that restaurant, this case isn't going to be settled legally in a cafe. It's going to be settled in the court based on the facts and law.
The folks in the control room, I don't need to see any more of that. He's trying to turn this in. He's trying to turn it into a spectacle, into a campaign ad. That's enough of that. We've seen it already.